all you want because I have to go to the bathroom. Hi, Karen. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
How's everybody?
Can't complain.
I'm glad.
Yeah, we're doing okay.
Tim, have the Musangwas ever come back to your house church or come to your house church? Looks like
Hello?
that.
Sort of. We
What?
haven't met in person yet. I know. Let's see.
Good. Hi, guys.
I forget all their last names. She was asking if the Masangwas have come back. So we've sort of kept in contact with Odile and Jean, and Clementine.
Yeah, they never were really very involved when we did like Zoom and things like that. I think it was just hard. It was just harder. They did a little bit on, Odile did a little bit with us on Marco Polo, but none of the rest of them seemed like that wanted to do that. And so
Yeah, I saw Clementine Sunday. She was there with Philip.
good.
Well, thank
Well, welcome. Sounds like we're having some good small chat there. I feel like my blower and my AC's out. And so I've been in my car and I'm taking it to the dealer on Thursday to get fixed. But goodness, those little things that you get used to, creature comforts. I've been running around doing errands and yeah, that's been fun. So I look like I just worked out. I did not just work out. I've just been driving my car. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. Would someone open us up with a word of prayer and just ask the Lord to be present, the Spirit to teach us as we dive in tonight and talk about house church texture and just catch up. Would someone be willing to open us up in prayer?
Sure.
Karen, would, oh,
No, it's
okay.
fine.
Oh,
You can
who
ask
said
me.
sure? Oh, sorry. Karen, would you mind?
Sure. God, we're grateful for the opportunity to just talk about your church and your work. And Lord, so as we kind of talk for the next hour, Lord, just navigate our conversation. So Lord, that it would be fruitful and that, Lord, we would take away something that helps build your kingdom. And God, so we give this conversation back to you and just ask that you are the Lord of it. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Karen. Well, as usual, let's check in and just do some wells and weirds. So how is life? How is house church? What is going well? And what is going weird and or?
I would say for us, something that's going somewhat well and weird is we have moved to mixed house church. We meet at a park, socially distantly at a park, but we also then put a phone on and have Zoom at the park. So those that can't be there physically are still there on Zoom. It gets complicated if there's more than like 2 or 3, but it's actually not too bad right now.
Karen, as you guys are doing that, like what sort of things are you doing in the park, and like what's the integration of Zoom look like throughout the evening?
So we don't turn it on until after dinner. So it's not like the small talk aspect, not because we don't think that's important, but because battery life is only so long. And using Wi-Fi for 3 hours versus an hour and a half, or not Wi-Fi, gigs on a cell phone. So that can be rather expensive. But yeah, so once we get into like the content time is when we kind of just turn that on, and it just as people have questions, we leave the speaker and the microphone on the whole time so that people can talk and interject as needed. But yeah, it seems to work pretty well.
Great. Anyone else begun doing anything hybrid like that yet?
Yeah, we tried that last night.
How'd it
Same
go for you guys?
same thing. I don't know. I need to talk to Amanda, who is our only person that zoomed in. I mean, she said she understood what was going on. She didn't have a lot of interaction, so that's something that we've got to work on.
Bobby, that's kind of been our experience. We have a hybrid where about half of the people come to the house and about half of them join by Zoom. And I get a sense that the people on Zoom are not as connected. So we're just experimenting with different things. We're trying to find a rhythm, like once a month, we're going to do a service project. So like this week, we're back at the church, cleaning the church. But we're going to try, because the children in our house church, it's very difficult. It can be very chaotic. So we're going to try doing Zoom maybe twice a month from 8 to 9 p.m. after the kids are in bed. And then I think if everybody is on Zoom like we are here, we'll get better interaction because everybody's in the same venue. But when people are trying to talk, it's a real challenge to try to get people involved that are in Zoom. So we're just trying different things right now.
Yeah, we were at a park too, which I think makes it more difficult to interact on Zoom. But we felt with the number of kids that we have, if we had cried it at somebody's house, it would have been normal, the old normal type, which would have been fine, but I'm not sure everybody was ready for that tight of an evening yet.
Well, and I think that's why we do a park, is so that there's the capacity for so much more spacing. Plus, the park that we use, there's a pavilion literally next to the playground. So the kids they love it. They just go and run and have fun on their own.
Are you guys doing this like an every week thing and every other week thing? Like what's the cadence for you guys with that?
Yeah, we're every week.
We did last night, we're going to do next week, and then it just happens that all the shepherds are out the next week, so we're leaving it up to the house church whether they want to show up at the park or not. We'll see.
Yeah, I know for me, as what we're doing within our house church, and we'll continue with the Wells and the Weirds, but let's just kind of park here for a minute since it's come up. We're doing like every other week together, but just the guys together and the girls together. And then on the weeks that we're not all together, we're doing Zoom. And I think we've mentioned this here before for us, but just identifying like, okay, what are we capable of doing on Zoom that we can't, do in person, that we can actually get into a little bit more deeply. So reflection upon the gathering from that week, more accountability and that sort of thing. And then when we're together, it's more of the social experience. But we're doing it, split gendered, just because we are a larger house church with a lot of kids. And so trying to do everyone together would just be a little bit too much. And so I think that's something for us to think through as we identify like the hybrid experience. Does that mean just like everything that we do is hybrid, or is it hybrid? Are there certain vehicles, certain expressions of our house church that are hybrid, that are digital, and certain expressions of our house church that are in person? And then being mindful too, like there's people who probably just don't even want to yet gather with everyone else. And so, inviting them in via Zoom when you can. Others, as you guys have thought
Jason,
through that.
was your house church like that before? Was that weekly model, or was it everybody all the time?
No, it was everybody all the time. This is kind of an adaptation that we're entering into post-COVID. Anyone else begun to kind of think through that, or is it just kind of like, yeah, we're just still doing the digital thing for right now?
We started the hybrid experience a couple weeks ago, and it feels a little more awkward for me personally, having people around the table or in the family room and then having people on the computer. But we have at least several people, and I know of 2 to 3 who just will not be able to come back until COVID is resolved. So I feel like we've gotten and Emma could maybe address this because she's a part of the house church. I feel like we've gotten pretty comfortable with Zoom, and people are sharing well via Zoom. The hybrid is going to require a new adjustment, and it feels a little awkward still to me trying to do that. And then when you have people gathered and you're trying to use Zoom, I'm curious, Karen, how this is working for you guys, because if you want people who are joining digitally to see the people who are speaking live, it's constant shifting the phone around, the computer around. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's still pretty awkward for me personally.
I guess we don't worry about who's speaking as much. I think partly because we all know each other's voices. And I mean, yes, you miss a lot of the facial inflection. But yeah, moving the phone around would be way more awkward than just we prop it up and view as many as we can and then just go with that. So like this past week, this will be the 3rd week we do it. But like this week, I wasn't even in the frame at all. But I mean, it didn't really matter. They got most everybody else at the table, and kind of because we intentionally spread out, so we just make it a wide shot and go with it. Like, so yeah, I think if we were to hand the phone around, yeah, it would be way more awkward. But we just prop it up and leave it as it is.
Thanks, appreciate that.
I think the encouragement is obviously, we are all figuring this out as we move along. And this is really what's important about calls like these, is we can all bounce ideas off of each other, be innovative with this stuff. And so I know it can be discouraging with where we're at. And, but just, remember, like, there's in a lot of ways we're discovering things right now that future generations, are going to have to, will thank us for, because we've gone through the hard part of figuring out what's working and what's not working. And that's where it's really important for us just to continue to encourage. And my encouragement would just be in all of this is, if it feels like it's not working, you have the freedom to try something new. Like, don't feel like you have to do it the ways that it's always been done. Be imaginative about what those other possibilities could be like. So who else? What's going well? What's going weird?
I'll just say I feel like we get to a certain place where we feel like we have a good rhythm, and then like something changes and we have to refigure it out. And I think I'm more just like, Tim and I are really flexible, and so all these changes don't really like bother us a lot, but trying to lead in a group where a lot of people have a lot of different comfort levels, and I feel like this is probably where a lot of you guys are at. It's hard to figure out what to prioritize and how to move forward with making everybody feel loved, and yet knowing that we're just not going to ever meet every single person's like needs, and having to come to terms with that, and not sure how to like figure out like what's most important, what's most God honoring in a group when I don't know, when there's lots of different situations going on, and when the world keeps changing too, and that those scenarios. So I think that's in general just like what we just came back from vacation, and that was kind of our threshold of when we were ready to be with people, because we were vacationing with Tim's parents and staying in the same place as they were. So we were trying to be mindful of how many interactions we had before then. But now we're like, we're ready. And, and I think the majority of our house churches too. But we're moving into somewhat of a hybrid situation on Thursday, and I don't know how it will go. We've never tried it before, so we'll see. It's like not my favorite, but I also like want everyone to see that we're just like we're just trying to get as many people there as we can. But I have a feeling it won't be anybody's favorite. Like the person being on Zoom and other people are together, who wants to do that? But at the same time, like there are some in our house church that is just like need to be in the same space as people. Right now we have a lot of singles in our house church too, and I'm keenly aware of how long they've been doing this and how like how tiring that can be, or I don't know, even if they're with their roommates, that they just need to be around other people too. So anyway, I think that's just, it's confusing, and it's also just kind of like how to prioritize whose needs, so.
I think that's one of the things we talked about this week when we started with is we just told everybody, guys, we're trying our best, but we don't have any answers. You know, and we're going to fail at some things and let us know, you know, and be honest. And I think they took that well, and it actually was healing, because we were starting to get some strife between the we're ready to meets and the we're not ready to meets, and some frustration on both sides. And I think that, at least for those who were in attendance, that kind of helped. And it was good for us as shepherds to be able to say, you know, kind of freeing to go, you know, guys, we don't have any answers and we're going to try this and we'll see where God leads. And if it's not the right direction, we'll turn around and we'll go the other way.
Jason, one thing that has been going well that I found is trying to direct the house church to acts of service. And what I'm finding is that when we do this, we have been able to engage some spouses that are non-believers who don't come to the house church, but they will come when we do some kind of service project. So there's nothing that brings people together more than doing something for others. So we're just kind of listening for opportunities. And I mean, it may even be cleaning the church. This past weekend, it was helping somebody move. But I would say look for that. And those people that are, I mean, because even people that don't feel comfortable coming to house church, they will come and help clean the church because we're about 100 feet apart and you have your mask on, so there's no risk there. So I've just been amazed that non-believers would come to a service opportunity that won't come, you know, to content.
Yeah, no, Gary, I'm in complete agreement. And I think that's what's really important about these type of conversations and reminding ourselves, like, especially as leaders, that we don't want to be solo leaders, right? That we want to create a culture of leadership within our community. Joey Turner, if anyone remembers him from back in the day at Apex, he had a saying that he would use when he was teaching that I think is applicable in a lot of ways, that all of us are smarter than any of us, and inviting people into the creative process for what, you know, house church looks like. And, you know, just I mean, how can we frame that conversation for folks, right? One, like I think we frame it around the questions of up, in, and out, you know? So based upon, you know, where we're at and these experiences that we're having, like what's the best way for us to do up right now? What's the best way for us to do in right now? What are some best practices for doing out? I shared this, I want to share this with you guys again, but if you go to the house church resources page, let me share the screen. We did this a couple weeks ago, and it was a really great tool. Let's share my desktop. So if you go to this recorded meetings, and I think I sent this in an email as well. Underneath week 9, house church up in and out, there's a house church health check PDF. And in that, it's got some really great questions for just what it looks like to have balanced house church life. And it's, you'll notice that the up, the in, and the out, it's not so much focused on the doing as much as it's focused on the being. And so this might even be something for a house church, you know, for you guys to pull out as you guys are talking about, like, hey, we're in a in-between stage right now. What used to work, you know, worked because we're all together, but we're not all together now. So we've got to be a little bit inventive here. And, you know, I'll read this, you know, for you guys, just for the sake of the conversation, but up, group members make regular time to, yep.
Do you mind if I share something before you start?
Yeah, sorry, please do.
You had shared this, with us, and we printed it off. And the other night on our Zoom house church call, because everybody was on Zoom this week, we actually did this as a group.
Oh,
And
great.
it led to a tremendous conversation, specifically around the out. I mean, there's only so much you can do in that amount of time, but it was clear that everybody felt some weakness in that area. And it led to a really healthy conversation. And we got this picture of coming alongside each other missionally. So granting, like Gary's been saying about the service project, there's value in that, but also in people's individual outreaches. How can we be supporting each other? It was just a beautiful dialogue that came from the survey.
Yeah, and I think I put it, nope, it's not on there. I thought that I put it, I'll make sure that I put this actual thing on the House Church resources page so you can go there and you can check out, because it's just copy and paste. So group members make regular time to retreat, reflect, and pray. Together, you have found a way of praying regularly that suits your life and community personality. People in the group feel close to God at the moment. Your group worships God in numerous creative ways. You hear God's voice when you gather and put into practice what he is saying. As a group, you observe both regular and occasional spiritual disciplines. Together, you find relevant ways to learn from and be shaped by Scripture. And so just, engaging, like maybe you take a week and talk through each of these up, these ends and these out, and just say, hey, because this kind of hybrid COVID experience, it's not going away anytime soon. Like as much as like we're all hoping like July 4th would hit and we're back at the, we're back to normal. we're there this weekend and we're all kind of like, oh, well, expectations were not met and we're all really, really disappointed. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting everywhere. All of my conversations right now just have this sense of sobriety and somberness about them. And it's just kind of like, oh, this really isn't going where we wanted it to. With the end, everyone has someone in their life who knows everything about them. There's nothing being carried alone in darkness. Both marriage and singleness are supported within the group with a healthy and balanced perspective. People are comfortable both giving and receiving mentoring. People feel that they belong to a group who together form an authentic expression of church. The group is characterized by regular and gracious hospitality. You feel loved emotionally and supported practically by the house church. It's not just going to meetings. People regularly discuss with each other how they are seeking to be better followers of Jesus. Overall, people feel surrounded by meaningful community. Out. Your group has a clear missional focus that you devote time and energy towards. Your community spends time with lots of friends and contacts who are not in church. In the last month, your group has found ways to lovingly demonstrate the power of the kingdom to people who are not Christians. Your group has seen people with whom you are on contact start to follow God in the last year. People are involved in lots of activities beyond church life. The place where many house church members spend most of their time at work, study, play is predominantly in relationship with non-Christians. As a group, you're excited about your involvement in the serving of wider missional context. In the last 3 months, each member has offered to pray with someone who's not a Christian. Your group has a name that reflects who you are. Your group is actively involved in an area where injustice exists. And one of the things with that is like, that is not a do to be list. That's a B list. It's these are things of who we are and what it looks like is expressed differently. But we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and I think one of the things that can so easily happen is we get caught up in the rote traditions of what we've done as house church. And that's just as we're learning, and even in this conversation, that just the rote things that we've always done don't necessarily work now. And the church and her practices are adaptable to the broader context and culture. So what are your thoughts on that? Don, you unmuted. Was that purposeful before I call on you? She doesn't even hear me. Hi, Don. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on that health checklist?
I think it's outstanding. That really gives a lot of great ideas to get the house church to begin to think about where they are on the up in and out. So appreciate you making that available. Where did you have that? It was in just some resources that you had?
So this beast,
Okay.
launching missional communities. I can get you guys a PDF copy of this.
Well, yeah, if you just get us that, what you just showed us.
Yeah, I'll get you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have time to go through
Yeah.
all 228 pages.
Yeah.
But what's
that's
really
not
good, what's really good about this book is it really is kind of like a, what am I dealing with in my current situation? And you can find a section that like directly addresses that with practical examples and outcomes. So it's of all
With the
the,
exception of a global pandemic, right?
right, exactly, with the exception of global
Big
pandemic.
asterisks there. Yeah, we actually read through that yesterday, Jason, that list, because we watched the training with Sally and Liz, and then I had saw it underneath it, so I looked at it, and Tim and I just thought it creates a lot to think about, and we've recently been trying to address those ins and outs more with each other, and being just more balanced, and it just works with our name because we're Triangle House Church, and so we are that's what we kind of changed our mission to. We call it loving, living, and learning, and that's how we call up in and out, and that's like our 3 points. And it's been really freeing to be thinking about this, and I feel like we're clicking a little bit with what's happening, like even in our neighborhood, like there's this grocery store that has been being built for years, and they just broke ground on it, and we're members of it. And from that list, I just thought, well, maybe we could contact the organizer and see how our house church could help be involved. Like, I don't know what he would have us do, but maybe they have an event somehow we could partner with, maybe, and so I guess what Tim and I have always been doing on little amounts, I guess I see those as opportunities now for our house church to be doing things together, or like combining those things. So even we're going hiking on 4th of July, and I just thought maybe we could ask someone we know who likes to hike to come with us, and it's not like a big missional outreach we're doing. It's not like we're making flyers, but we're just going hiking as a house church. And I feel like that's one thing that people feel comfortable doing right now. And so maybe we could invite somebody into that. And I guess all of those ideas are so great, but what the big light bulb moment for me through Liz's training and through these is just like the question, can I invite someone in? Or can I, can I make that a together thing? Whether that's together with our house church or together with someone who's outside of our house church, how could we make that a together thing? Seems to be really changing things in my perspective anyway.
So if anyone doesn't have any other well or weirds, let's go ahead and use that as an opportunity to transition. If you were able to listen to the interview with Liz and Sally, were there any major takeaways? I do have a couple questions, but let's just start off with that question. First, does anyone have another well or weird that they're just, sitting on the edge of their seats to share? I don't want to neglect that. All right, so let's move on with the Liz Lovell and Sally talk. If you guys were able to listen to that, what were some things that stood out for you? Jillian shared about just kind of like inviting people in as you're going. It was reminiscent too of like what Hugh was sharing from the incarnation experience. Tim and Jill, did anyone actually listen to it? That's not like actually like a judgment, actually. I just want to double check to make sure whether or not, just to see if we're on the same page, because that might change my questions. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so what were some other general kind of just takeaways from that conversation? Anything that stood out for you?
I think
He was muted. Tim said 2 dishwashers.
I don't think we have enough room.
No, this is my second dishwasher right here.
I'm from Kentucky. You can put that on the front porch or the back porch.
Oh,
Perfectly
hey!
acceptable there.
There you go.
That works.
Maybe
You
not.
live in Dayton, you can do that. That's fine.
It might not be acceptable in Ohio, but where I'm from, it's acceptable to put anything on the front porch that you want.
It's not acceptable in suburbia, but it definitely is acceptable within the city limits to do anything you want to do.
Certain parts of suburbia are good. Like here in Miamisburg, we definitely have all sorts of things in people's yards and on
Yeah.
porches.
I think the thing that I got out of watching that was just simplicity. Just keep it simple.
Mhm. Yeah, that was, you mentioned the 2 dishwashers, Bobby, but I would say that was my,
That was Tim.
or
That was Tim.
But that was my biggest takeaway, you know, because I went to 2 different, when I was over in Sheffield, I went to, you know, it wasn't just Sheffield, it was also Liverpool and Cambridge, but everywhere I went, they all had 2 dishwashers. And I asked, like, is this customary, like within British life, to have 2 dishwashers? And they're like, no, it's not. It's just something that happens within our house church, you know, missional community network movement. You know, they're one of their, you know, key values is simplicity within their kind of within their network. And for simplicity, it looked like having multiple dishwashers, which was just absolutely insane to me.
And I guess that's simplicity was not the word I equate it with. The thing that I equated it with and the takeaway I had was pre-planning is okay. Like, plan as much as you can so that house church and everything thereafter keeps your life as healthy and non-stressful as possible. Like, if you pre-plan, oh, let me build my house with 2 dishwashers. Like,
Yeah.
there's purpose in that. And so it's like being intentional with not just, oh, let's have a party. Oh yeah, who's gonna clean up? Who's gonna do this? Who's gonna do that?
Right.
Pre-planning those aspects to then have not only a successful house church meeting or event, fill in the blank, but also then a successful like outcome of, oh yeah, we could do this again versus, oh, that was hell, I'm never doing that again.
You have to
Yes,
put a quarter in the swear jar, Karen.
Mhm. So yeah, I think we pre-plan events, which versus pre-planning our houses so that they're warm. You know, like I had friends who had a coffee nook, so everybody always made their own coffee just because it was out there, and then everybody knew where the stuff was. So I mean, but a lot of times we don't do that because we're like, oh, we wouldn't mess with people's stuff, you know.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we learned a long time ago. It's easier. Coffee is the one thing that comes to mind. It's easier to just, like, we put the coffee pot on the counter in front of the cabinet where the mugs are, and we open the door to the mug cabinet, and it's an entire cabinet of mugs. And that way nobody feels like they're getting into any personal space. It's
Right.
already open, it's there, do what you want, and it makes them, you know, it is funny though, every once in a while you hear somebody in there clinging and clanging, they're looking for their favorite mug.
I almost called you Tillian. Sorry. You're getting ready to say something.
Well, there were a lot of things. The original term in house church, long time ago, we called this refrigerator rights. So that means when people feel comfortable enough to go in your refrigerator and get whatever they want. But the other thing that stuck with me, there are 2 things, just the encouragement to have fun was freeing and lovely and needed. And I do think that people will come for the fun, and like that's when you have a shared experience together, that is what grows relationships. That's why at camp you get really close to people really quick, because you're going through stuff together. You're, I don't know, learning how to climb over a rock wall and having to work together. And so I think if you can create a shared experience together, and if that experience is something non-threatening, I would say, like, you know, there's been lots of examples through Hugh Halter's thing and everything, but I just think about all the varied interests that people have. I mean, we went kayaking with Tim's family, and it was a shared experience. It was an adventure, and it drew us closer together. And we have jokes about it, and you know, we went through something together, and so it and we took pictures together. Like there are those things that build relationship, that shows I love you and I'm here for you, even if we don't believe the same things. And then there can become authentic conversations out of that, loving conversations that come out of that. But one of the things that Liz said that struck me, she was really saying that if you're in the same space as someone and Jesus is inside of you, then that person is meeting with Jesus, whether or not they realize it. And that was really encouraging to me. I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves without recognizing that, like, we're a vessel and that's it, and that we're to be willing and to pursue as Jesus does, and just to let him lead and take it from there. But anyway, so I thought the conversation overall was very freeing in a lot of ways.
So let's camp there, if that's okay, because that was actually one of mine. You know, my two major questions that I had was, one, how do we see home as mission-based primarily? And my second question was building off of that idea of like not being too religious with people, but we take the Spirit of God with wherever we go. So when people, just like you said, when people interact with us, they're interacting with God, you know, in us and through us. And so, yeah, just yours, just Jillian's that you brought up, of just like that whole idea of just being present with people, you know, inviting people into our lives and into our homes with no agenda. Just what does, you know, what are your thoughts about that? We've talked about that with the Hugh Halter experience. We're now kind of taking that Hugh Halter experience and we're taking it one more level actually into our homes, as opposed to like out in the community being with others, but in our homes, inviting others into that space.
Yeah, that's where I saw it too, how freeing it is to be able to just be relaxed, to just sort of, instead of trying to force it, I guess was what I seemed like. Well, let's see, we have to have some sort of Bible study, and we have to make sure we do some sort of Jesus thing. And it sometimes, I think, when we if we just invite people in and just socialize and do things in a normal sort of relaxed way, I think they may receive that as more loving and accepting than you know, trying to like Jillian said, like trying to say, you know, I somehow or another I have to get to the Roman road here, but we're playing Parcheesi. So how do I connect that? You know, and it just doesn't work, as opposed to, you know, maybe it's not supposed to connect tonight, but they'll make some comment about, well, you guys get together and you have fun. And that kind of appeals to me.
Others. You're muted, Emma.
have a house church. I'm kind of learning from Joan and Mark, but in just my own home and inviting people in, that was my big thing. How do I connect the two? How do I bring Christ just fully engaged? And now, after listening to Hugh Halter, it's a progression. It's a huge progression. And this past week, you had asked, what was weird, what was good. I had a couple good things going on. I had the recovery people, the addiction people come in on Friday night, and we prepared, we cooked out and, just shared time together. We did pray, but, wasn't a big, didn't make a big deal about it. But we just shared their lives. I mean, we've known them probably for about 4 or 5 years, and they came in December and then they came in Friday. But it's just going deeper in fellowship with them. Like Jim and one of the guys, they always talk sports when they saw each other in the clinic. But now, all these birds flying all around, because we have all these bird feeders, and we're just into birds, Jim more so. And this one guy had that same love. And they were just talking about birds, and they were just everywhere. We brought out our books and our binoculars, and it was so good, because it was just going to an even deeper level. And then the other guy that was there, he was really into astronomy, so he had his astronomy app and had it on his phone. And so he shared it with me, and I put it on it was just so good, because there's something about being in a home, even if you've had a relationship for many years, there's more to share. You find out more about each other. And they just texted later and said, that was just wonderful. We really enjoyed it. And we're going to do it, of course, again in a month or so. That was so good. And they're not necessarily believers. So it's just a beginning. It's relaxed. It's fun. It's so highly invitational. And that's why I was talking to some people today. I'm very invitational, and I just have to figure out how to get the other part in, eventually. But I think it will come eventually, because Christ is in us. So it will come out. Just have to be patient and have a good time. We just had a wonderful time in the meanwhile.
Yeah, keep having fun, keep enjoying life. They'll come to you with life questions. They'll come to you with asking for wisdom. And when they do, that's when you can say, here's my perspective, and I happen to have this perspective because I'm a Christian. And that's good news in that particular area of their life as they receive it. One of the things that I think is really important, so we've talked about, like, let's meld these two of inviting people in our lives, but understanding your home as a mission base. So, like, when we talk about texture, I think one of the things that's really important is first learning how to create texture of hospitality within our homes first.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This word texture has come up, I don't know how many times. Like, what the heck does it actually mean, and where did it come from, and why are we using it? Like, I don't understand this.
Tell us how you really feel, Karen.
I'm like, where is this word? Like, it just keeps popping up, and nobody explains what it is.
So I'm using that word because it's language that Sally and Mike use. The best way that I would describe it is, instead of thinking through house church, we're having people in our homes of doing this and this and this and this. How do we create an atmosphere of hospitality in which people feel like family? That's the best way that I would describe it. So is the texture in your house, is the texture as you invite people over, is the texture that you experience with other people, is it one of, hospitality and home and family, real family, or is it, hosting, right? Which is so often, I think, what the trap that we can get into with this. And so if I were to describe what this word texture is, it's hospitality versus hosting, to use, you know, classical parlance that we've had. But then even smaller things, I'm not sure if Sally got into this as much, but you know, making sure that there's candles lit so that it smells, you know, nice, you know, that there are people's favorite, you know, if someone has like a favorite candy bar or, you know, a favorite type of chocolate, to have, you know, those sort of things sitting out for folk. The tiny, like little things, like little pieces of decoration that, you know, communicate a message that it is that, that they're about. Like I remember in one of my house churches, it was Acts 1:8, and this really beautiful, not Acts 1:8, Acts 2 at the end, 32 through 42 or whatever, where it is about they were all in each other's home breaking bread and all of that sort of thing. So that's, I think, kind of like what that is after. Just not being sterile, not just being like having things out on but inviting people in and creating that sense of hospitality. So let's ask it this way. Instead of talking about the word
attitude.
texture.
It's more sensory and attitude, right?
Yeah, it's a sensory experience. A lot of us who are in leadership tend to be intuitives. So we're in like IN or EN type people, whereas the majority of people are sensory based, right? So if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, and I can almost answer for you if a word like sensory or texture is hard for you to understand, as it is for me, it's because I'm an ENFP. I'm an intuitive type, and most people who are stepping into leadership are intuitive types. And so what we're after is also appealing to the sensory type, because they make up 70% of the population.
We're going to show and tell. This has a texture, and it is very comfortable. It's this. It's not. Yes, thank you, Emma. Yeah, I think in general, it's just like, I think what it means is making someone know that they're thought of and loved, and that it might be a place they want to return. Not that it's perfect. Like there's a difference between like, okay, I show you that pillow, but there's also toys scattered, strewn all over the floor, you know? So there's things where it's like maybe very simple, I thought of you, but you can also come as you are. I think there's not any like one way that happens, but you kind of just own how God has created you to make that to happen, and has created your space to make that to happen.
Jillian, just to kind of commend you guys with Dayton One and the Word, you guys have really good texture.
It's not that. Thank you. I will pass that along to those that are gifted in it.
Right. It feels warm. It feels welcoming. It doesn't feel sterile. It doesn't feel like someone, pulled it straight out of a magazine, though it could look like it's in a magazine, right? But it feels like it's a place of warmth.
I'm so glad.
So let's talk about just that sense, though, of hospitality versus hosting. I mean, this is a classic, continued conversation that we are wrestling through within, house church life, especially like, how do we do hospitality on Zoom? Like when we're not in each other's homes? Like, that's my question that I'd like us to talk through. Like, how do we express hospitality in something like a Zoom call?
I think just the fact that you let somebody see your home is actually inviting. So instead of, and I know it's kind of cool to play with the backgrounds and stuff, but I'd rather see your house. It's warmer, it's more inviting, it's more of a connection.
Yeah, almost even kind of like,
But-
Emma, your background of all of the pictures on the wall, right? I mean, that's just kind of like, whoa, you know? I'm typically in front of just a brick wall, or back here, you know, I'm trying to be a little bit more show my bedroom type thing.
I sometimes invite everybody to unmute and just say, let's all be in the same space.
Yeah.
I love that.
So it's
Yes.
like being family together.
I actually, when it comes to these type of calls and huddles, like everyone being muted is, I'm learning something that takes away from the hospitality, because there's almost a sense in which you, like, good conversation, you actually talk over each other just a little bit, you know, not like me as I do sometimes. Don't follow my example, because I can talk over people pretty bad. I'm always growing. But others, like, what are other ways that we create hospitality?
I think it helps people to feel safe when they know what to expect. Like, you know, I think when they have something safe to hold on to, like, I don't feel comfortable in a plane until I have my coffee when they roll out the thing, because I know, okay, it's safe enough for the host to, or the flight attendants to be out. And I'm holding something that's familiar to me,
Yeah.
and it grounds me a little bit, even though I'm 30,000 feet in the air. I'm terrified of flying, but I don't let it stop me. But
Watch that on international flights. They sometimes serve coffee when they shouldn't.
oh, okay.
When you're outside the
Oh
United
man.
States.
Well, I think that when others, even online, know what to expect, and they know, okay, we're going to have an like, if you just set the tone, like, we're going to have an opening question so we can check in, and then we're going to, you know, this is the time we're going to end, and we're going to try to give everybody a turn. Like, even those very small things are the coffee that people are holding on to, you know, because they know what's coming, they know what to expect, they're not caught off guard. And I think that's especially important for those who are a little shyer, or who process things internally more than externally. That helps them feel more at home, and gives them some grounding space.
Yeah, that's really good. And Joan, I'm loving that one of just everyone be unmuted. I think that's so good.
So one of the things we did early on, and it kind of drifted off after a while, and now that we're hybrid, it doesn't happen, but when we first initially switched to Zoom, we actually would literally, everyone would move their laptop or their phone or whatever device they were on into the kitchen, and we would literally cook dinner together at the beginning of house church. And so, like, because that's what we do during regular house church, we eat dinner and kind of just catch up or whatever. So, like, we physically moved all of our devices into the kitchens of our individual houses and would cook dinner and eat dinner on Zoom. Before then, like, we would all move back to our offices or living rooms or whatever. But that was just one of the ways where it was like, you just had that time to connect. Because I think, maybe it's just me, but like, when you're around food, you can talk for your, like, there's just something like, oh, just as you're making whatever, it's like, oh yeah, how's da-da-da-da-da? Like, you just get that comfortability factor. And so, yeah, that was one of the things we did pretty early on, and we stuck with it for a while. And then people just got busy and whatnot, and so it eventually changed, but it was something I really look forward to, is just people cooking together while not together.
Karen, I think you bring up a really good point, because from the get-go, we invited people, you know, our house church meetings usually started at 6 with dinner. So we would invite people to get on Zoom and we would just eat together. And what I've seen is a tremendous self-consciousness in terms of, it's funny, we'll sit across the table and eat with one another with no problem at all. But to get on Zoom and eat, people feel very awkward about that, apparently.
Messy eaters.
Yeah, I mean, it just never caught on at all.
I'm there with you. I think what you guys are doing is great, but I'm often, when I eat, you'll see me go like this. I'm sorry, Joan, I cut you off, just like I said I do. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. Thanks.
I just got a brilliant idea, and it's because of Elise Herzing. Many of you know her, and she's just brilliant. But she does a lot of our communication for our house church. And at the end of every, we're on band now, so at the end of every band message she asks a question just to see if people have read all the way through. But it's a question that helps us get to know each other too. And then she started adding some of the more relevant ones, I would say, over into this, like we have a contact spreadsheet. So one of the for instance, she asked what everyone's favorite ice cream was. And then she had everyone comment on their favorite ice cream. Then she added those things over to the contact spreadsheet. So we have a record of what everyone's favorite ice cream is. And this is going to be our first time meeting together in forever. And I think I'm going to go to the grocery store and get everybody's favorite ice cream and surprise them with it on Thursday. That would be so fun. But I think just something like that, where you're taking advantage of every opportunity to get to know each other and do fun, loving things like that.
Yeah, sorry, Gary.
I was going to say, if you have children, we've enjoyed having the children join us on Zoom early on, because they always have things they want to share.
Yeah.
And maybe they're animals. It's all over the place. But when they do that, everybody enjoys that, and it gets people to know, and you get a lot of positive vibes. So if you have children in your house church, include them early on. And then a lot of times they go off and do other things, but that's helpful.
I love that.
What I'm hearing is, like, again, the sense of people being known, creating space for which, people are known, and even in the little things, as opposed to, again, just like, here's the rote stuff that we're going to go through. Are we doing things that are inviting people to come out of their shell, that like super easy and low hanging fruit. Like, I love that ice cream thing, because you get to know, a little bit about each other. One of the things that Becky Breen did when she first came on staff was she gave a questionnaire to everyone, like favorite ice cream, favorite soft drink, favorite, X, Y, or Z. And, it was mainly for when we do birthdays, but you still get that, on your birthday. And it's just like, wow, I got a Coke Zero and a Lindt 90% chocolate. Like, I never get that, it's great. And I think those little things in which, people get to express themselves and then it's honored. I think that's like really, the essence of it. Because when you think about biblical hospitality, when Jesus, talks about, hospitality in reference to prayer, you're not going to go, and if someone, comes to your house in the middle of the night and they ask for something, you're not going to turn them away. Even more so, how much will the Father let you in if you ask for, an egg or bread? He's not going to give you a viper or a scorpion. And I think that's the essence of it, is like, are you inviting people in, to be known? So how do we, it's 9 o'clock, I'm just realizing, like, what is a next step for you in practicing hospitality and adding texture to your house church experience? What's the next step for you?
Favorite ice cream question. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do. Like, I'm probably thinking the same thing of like, hey, our guys are getting together this week, and so probably like, favorite movies or something like that. And then I don't know 100% yet what I'm thinking, but probably some sort of get to know you type question for when the guys are together. What's the next step? What's the next best step?
I think for me, it's going to be Jillian's idea of inviting other people to come alongside if I'm going to do something fun like canoeing, hiking. I tend to think of it more of just me and my wife. And I think bringing other people along is a great opportunity to get to know them. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't practice it well, but I've often heard say like discipleship is just inviting people to do, you know, the everyday stuff with us.
Just being without any agenda.
Yeah.
I like that concept of just inviting people along with what you're doing. Because like the hard thing I've had with this conversation, and even just last week's conversation, lecture thing, was just the idea. I'm like, we don't host in my house. Nobody comes to, I'm not even at my house. Like, I'm never here. And it's like, so what does this whole thing like about house mean for me? And it's like, well, don't lock it into that word or that concept, but just that idea of hospitality doesn't mean house. It can mean just, it's a feeling where you are and how you are. Like you are a hospitable person or you're a host. And like, do I want to be a host person or do I want to be a hospitable person?
Yeah, Karen, I'm really glad you said that because I wrestle with that as a single person too, especially and living in a home that's probably not the most kid friendly, because whenever people bring their kids, they're like, that's not happening again. And I do everything I can.
Or old people friendly because you have to climb the stairs.
Yeah, I should probably just buy a new house.
You're moving to Dayton, remember?
Yeah. All right. One more, Don.
Oh, I mean, this is kind of like, even like my sister is not very comfortable eating out yet. So we've just been like getting food and meeting at a park somewhere. And that's totally within her comfort level versus like going to a restaurant or whatever. So, I mean, which is how I'm spending time with my nieces and nephews right now. And, you know, it's just, one of my aunts teases us that all we do is eat out, but they're teenagers and it seems like the only time they'll actually interact with us is over a meal. So it's like, hey, let's just meet them at the park and, you know. So just even that can be things like that, you know, like go grab your favorite meal and meet us at the park, or we'll go for a walk on the bike path or something like that.
So, well, let's kind of close it off for this evening. I want to give you guys a little insight for what the month of July is going to look like for house church training. A couple things that are coming up. One in August, mark your calendars. Don't mark your calendars yet because I don't have the date. Just anticipate mid-August. We're going to be having a gentleman named Dale Stevenson, who's from Australia. We're going to do kind of like a mini immersion training around what it's called the Discovery Bible Method. So if you have people within your communities who are evangelist types, you definitely want them on for this. We're going to invite everyone, of course, as always, but this is really, it's an evangelistic tool. They've been using it within, there's a 1% conversion rate a year in Australia. They've been using this within their church over the last several years, and they are at a 33% conversion rate using this method. And so it's going to be a really, really awesome opportunity. And it's super like low risk, doesn't require like a whole lot of education. In fact, no education, anyone can do it. But we'll have that coming up in August with Dale Stevenson. The dates I think were just finalized yesterday. So we'll get those out to you ASAP or as soon as Jesse has them for you. But wanted to get you guys aware of that. For the month of July, we are going to do, I remember I told you, Joan, but instead we're going to do Thursday nights. So just Thursday evenings, not Monday evenings. And we're going to be just going through the four of the basic shapes that some of us have been acquainted with. Others of us, it's brand new, of the circle, the triangle, the square, and the semicircle. So that's what the month of July is going to look like. So starting July 9th, I believe that's the next week. So not this Thursday, but next Thursday. So that's what's coming up for the month of July. So if that's something that you want to dive into, you're more than welcome. And if you're already familiar with that, feel free to join for a refresher. But that's what the next 4 weeks of training are going to look like for Thursday evenings. So with that, you'll get an email. And yep, Joan?
What time will that be, Jason?
That is at 7. So same time as we've been doing on Thursdays. So, all right. Well, you all have a good night, and we'll see you guys next week.